In this video, I'm going to show you my exact kick drum processing for a song where I had to, unfortunately, replace the kick, the snare, and the toms. Poor recording, mic, crackling, all kinds of different stuff going on that I'm going to show you here in a second. But these techniques will apply whether you're using drum samples or live drums. You can apply them as well. So stick with me. I'm going to show you exactly what's going on first. Let's listen to the original so you can hear just how bad it was. Okay, you can hear the crackling. That's from one of the tom mics. Kick drum, probably could, make it. We can make everything better. Just not going to get amazing. But the artist's vision was that very hyper real. This is a live worship track. We've got references around like Elevation Church, Hillsong, Bethel, that kind of stuff. And so I knew we needed hyper real drums. We needed massive drums. Here's what we ended up with. So we took those pretty terrible recordings, turned them into something useful, and we're going to break down just the kick drum in this video, but we've got quite a bit to cover, so let's dive in. So first things first, I have a foundational kick drum sound. I use it all the time, and I love it for the bottom end, and we're going to look at that. But first, let me mention the couple of plugins here that are on the beginning of the chain. This session is a little older, and it's pre-M1 compatibility for trigger, all the plugins. So like this is before they were really compatible, and so I was using Blue Cat's patchwork to pull it in. That's all since been updated, and in new sessions you'll see I just load trigger and trigger works. But that's what those first couple of plugins are, so you're not missing anything. The very first thing is choose good samples, right? So we got a good sounding sample. Let's hear it. You can hear it, like it's good. Bottom end is great. It's tight. It's punchy. Let's hear it with no processing, I tell you what, so that we can really show off what's going on. Okay, so it's a one shot. In this section, the loudest section, I want it to just one shot after another, right? Let's check out the settings here. One of the most important things and incredible feature in Trigger is the ability to manipulate the envelope. The sustain and the release controls here, I have choked. They are 0.06 and 0.07 seconds, right? Let's put that all the way back and you can hear what's going on. Boom, 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 right? We get that all that extra kind of dumpster kick drum sustain going on. It's not that bad. But if you reference other tracks, you're going to find 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 out of 100, that kick drum sound is going to be sucked in, tight, punchy. It hits, it gets in, it gets out of the way. It serves its purpose. Any much longer than that with the sustain, and you start to get muddy issues with your bass, you can get dissonance between them, all kinds of problems that we can create while having a longer kick drum sound. And so the first thing I did here, let's select all this, let's put it back to 0.06 and 0.07. Those numbers are just specific to this song, where I landed for this particular track. Sometimes it's 12 and 15, sometimes it's 8 and 10. It doesn't matter, but usually they're very tight. So sustain and release, suck in that energy, and now here we go. Tight, punchy, gets in and gets out. Now, don't be fooled. We're going to enhance that. We're going to add to it. But for now, nice, tight, punchy bottom end. Next up, dynamics and velocity controls. These guys can save you a headache for sure. The basic gist is that the trigger set to its default settings will try to mimic the drummer's actual performance, which is just great. We want that. Sometimes. But when you have a dense mix, just like when you have a vocal, you need it to sit on top. We're squashing it, hitting it really hard with compression, even it out. I hear some of you purists like, no, I'd automate it. I got you. But modern, for the most part, we're going to hit it heavy with compression. Kick drums, you have a live kick, lots of dynamics. What's the first tool you're going to? Usually it's compression to even out the dynamics, to rein them in a little bit so that it will blend well, mix well with the track. Using the dynamics, you can see I'm here at a 21 and 89. That's basically, I want it to be a one shot so it sits on top of the track, and that's where I've set that to get there. I'll show you in a second where I've duplicated this track and I have a light kicks track where it's going to help me I've opened that up a little bit because in the softer sections, I want trigger to follow the dynamics of the drummer a little bit more. So we'll look at that. We'll show some A/B examples, but that's a great tool. Rein that in. Next up, let's talk about the range. This is a one shot, so it doesn't matter. The range doesn't matter. It's habit for me to just crank up on it and find the range. I did that and then remembered, oh, I have a one shot. It doesn't really matter. But the range, if you're used to programming MIDI drums, these velocities 0 to 127 are your velocity ranges. And so all the way down at 0 is nothing. 1, 2, 20, 30, those are like the drummer barely hitting the drum. In this case, a kick drum. And so if you have a TCI file or a multi-velocity drum sample, then setting this can be huge. If you want that kick to stay consistent and sit on top of the mix, what I do is I typically crank the range all the way up to I take the minimum and take the range all the way up to 127, and then I'll take the maximum and back off until I find the sound that I'm looking for. Often, drum sample companies will record everything from the drum barely hitting the head, just barely falling on it, all the way through to a full unnatural smack, really just laying into the drum. That unnatural smack is what you hear in a lot of amateur mixes because they don't know better than to go in and turn that down and dial the sound back to a more natural sound. And so what we can do is when you have those multi-velocity samples, or usually around 125, the 127 is going to be that hard, unnatural smack that you never really use. But 125, 123, 120, 115, anywhere in that range, just make sure you restrict it so it doesn't follow that hardest hit. Otherwise, you'll get these really weird smacky kicks whenever the drummer hit it harder. And then, it's all out of whack. But for me, for this one, it was at 127 because I went to go do that process, but then remembered I have a one shot. So cool tip, cool trick, didn't apply to this song. Next up, did I miss anything on trigger? No, I don't think so. We're going to move on and we're going to look at the next plugin. I like the sound of the sample. I knew that I wanted less mids and I wanted to clean up the top end. I was chasing my tail trying to find a sound that I liked, and then I ultimately ended up blending a kick click track where I high passed. We'll show you all those settings in a second, but this is the result of me chasing my tail trying to find a kick drum sound in the mid-range and top end that I like. The most important thing on this track right here is the 40 hertz. I wanted more sub frequencies, shake the speakers, give me a little bit more energy, but by doing that, remember we choked the kick with trigger, 0.06 and 0.07 on the sustain. This right here, by boosting low end that deep, it increased the sustain. And so I followed that move up with the trigger gate. And so this one is going to allow me to rein it back in. Let's hear the difference with the gate, and then I'll turn it off. I get it. In solo, I like that one better too. But in the context of the track, I needed that to be tighter. I needed to choke it a bit more, and that's what I ended up at. As a professional mixer, I've spent over 30,000 hours mixing and have been blessed to land over 2 billion streams of my work in the music industry, while mostly dealing with average and even poor recordings. For a limited time, I'm pulling back the curtain on my entire mix process to help you take raw files like these and turn them into final mixes and masters like this. Which is why I'm excited to share that if this video is still live, you can get free access to an entire course where I'm taking the song That Name by my good friend and award-winning artist Dr. Toomey from start to finish. Inside the course, you'll see me struggle with drum mics that got bumped, causing unrecognizable tom tracks, a mixture of studio lead vocals with live lead vocals, Lispy live vocals that had over-the-top de-essing committed to the tracks, and more. In addition to showing you how to deal with poor recordings, you'll also learn how to enhance the emotion of the song while serving the client's vision, mix hard-hitting drums that fit the song both with and without drum samples. Learn how to create and mix a rich, full, fat bottom end that serves the song and the genre that you're working in. Learn to sit vocals on top of the mix with more than just compression, but through clip gain, automation, effects, and more. Discover the skill of sculpting dense or busy productions and giving each instrument its own sonic space. Learn to deliver loud mixes that can compete across multiple genres when necessary, and master your mixes for when your clients can't afford additional mastering, and more. I want to help you take your amateur mixes and start delivering radio-ready mixes and masters that wow listeners and land you great clients. I've put a link in the description and pinned a comment so you can register right now completely free. But don't wait, because registration closes soon. I hope to see you on the inside. Next up, we have the FabFilter Pro MB. This is a trick that I've used for years now. Anytime you have kick, snare, or even tom hits that all hit at the same time, 4 on the floor, whatever, that burst of transient energy can cause problems, especially when you're mixing for loud mixes, modern mixes. And so by me mixing through my loudness processing, I mix through my 2-bus, I get it loud, I hit parallel compression, I mix through a clipper into a limiter, and that allows me to be mixing and make decisions based on a final master. It's my way of working. That's how I prefer to do it. Definitely recommend you try it if you haven't already. But by doing that, I can clearly hear when any transient energy has caused overs on the 2-bus. And so what I do is, let me say what I used to do. I used to, anytime there was a kick or a snare hitting at the same time, and I think if we come out here, well, it's where all the kick edits are. Let me show you those as well. So I went through, and every time that the kick and the snare hit at the same time, I went through and I chopped up the kick and I put it on the snare so that they were properly on each other and not flamming. You don't want that boom, flam energy, then it just sounds terrible, it's weird. So I put the kick on top of the snare and tightened up the editing even more. Next, one way that you can handle this is when the kick and snare hit at the same time, you could go in and just simply automate, highlight your... So like if we had, so like here we have kick and snare together, then we have just kick. Kick and snare together, just kick, just kick. And so what you could do is you could go to your volume automation and you could just pull down the kick 2, 3, 4, 7 dB, whatever you need to make sure that it sounds good when they hit together. Still get a little low end blast from the kick drum, but it doesn't overwhelm and cause overs or distortion on your 2-bus. That's one way to do it. Takes time. You got to go through and manually drag those down. So what I've been doing over the last few years is going to FabFilter Pro MB. Any sidechain compressor will work. Set your snare as the sidechain into the kick drum compressor. And so every time the snare hits, it's triggering this compression to push the kick drum down when they hit together. And let's solo the kick and the snare. We've got it on both of these. So we'll play the kick drum and the snare. So you can clearly hear the snare drum is winning the battle between them, but there's still that low end pulse from the kick drum. It's not all gone. So we get the low end energy, but we get to control it. And that's what I'm doing here with the FabFilter Pro MB. Okay, so now we've talked about the foundational kick. We're going to move on to the light kicks track. Remember we talked about here on the main kick, the dynamics controls, how I've just really made it to where it's a one shot hitting hard every time. Well, in softer sections of the song, you don't want that. You don't want it to be unnatural with the drummers just, smacking away at it. And so what I did is I multed the track and put any of the kick drum sections that I needed it to be more dynamic. I put them on their own track and I backed off of those controls. So everything's pretty much the same. I'll explain one more thing that's not. But here, the sustain, the release is the same. But the dynamics are a little bit less restricted. I'm opening the dynamics up and allowing softer hits to be softer hits, harder hits to be harder hits, a little more noticeable than in the main kick drum sound. Here, let's find a section where we got the kick drum. Yep, so here's a hard hitting kick, and then we'll go to the light kick and I'll show you the difference. Okay, that drummer, he played, right here you can see, soft hit, hard hit, okay? I chose to not let trigger follow that dynamic in the chorus, in the main sections of the song where I needed the kick to sit on top. Otherwise, you'll have kick disappearing in and out of the track. That's again why a lot of professional mixers working with live kick drums, that's the first tool they go to is to rein in the dynamic so you can get the kick sitting on top of the mix. We did that for the main kick. Let's come over here and let's find a section. So here's a soft hit and a hard hit. Now this is our light kick. I'm going to exaggerate it for you so you can really hear the difference. Let's put it back to just follow what the drummer did. I'm going to play it a couple times, but listen, if I loop that, listen to the volume difference. It's a one shot, but trigger is still trying to give us the dynamics. It's serving, to try and follow the drummer's dynamics, and I'm going to restrict it from doing that. But here's a loop. Just listen to it. So soft, hard. Okay, if we put this back where we had it, I don't know where we had it, but we'll figure it out. It's probably somewhere in there and in there. It's still a little bit of a difference, but it's nowhere near what it was, right? So I'm restricting the dynamics so that it fits this section of the song a little bit better. And so now we have lighter kick hits. Compared to out here. You could totally feel that, right? There's one more thing. If you've ever sat behind a drum kit and you hit the kick drum hard, you get a very defined, punchy, thwacky kick drum sound. Well, now hit it a little less hard, kind of a medium hit velocity, and you get a little more of that pillowy bottom end. You get more sustain, right? That is what I'm going for with this next processing. I've EQ'd the same amount of sub, but often I'm EQing more sub in this light kicks track to emulate that extra bottom end that comes from hitting the drum a little bit softer. But in this case, I just backed off the release on the gate a little bit more. So this kick drum in the light section has a little bit softer, a little bit more pillowy low end, a little more sustain than in the harder hitting sections. Here's the harder hitting section. Pillowy. And you could just feel the difference between them. What else? So that's the light kicks track. Well, now let's listen again. That kick drum sound, like, it's okay. It's good. Let's turn these off. Let's hear it in the context of the track here. Okay, so I hear that in the mix and I'm like, sounds good, could be better. And so what I did is I multed it and I chose to pull in a different kick sample for the click in the kick. Steal this technique from the dance world, right? And so you get all the time, what is it? Sonic Academy Kick 2 I use all the time. And you have the option to shape, tune, build the sustain, tighten it up, whatever, design your kick drum, but then you can import different ticks or clicks. And you pull in these samples and they're just all those different sounds, some with tambourines and all that. So all I'm doing here on this track is high passing, low cutting, right? So that I'm only blending the mids and the top end. Really, I just want the top end for this kick drum to blend with my original kick. And I inverted the polarity. Anytime you mess with high pass filters, filtering, EQ in general, you want to make sure you invert the polarity, flip phase. A lot of people will say you want to flip the phase and compare it to the original to make sure you're getting the best response from the thing that you're blending. And in this case, we chose to invert it and keep it. And so by taking out all the bottom end, I also boosted the output so that I could get the sample up in volume. And then I used the fader to control the balance between the two. But this kick drum, if we hit play, okay, let's pull the original kick drum in and then we'll blend the kick click. In solo, I don't particularly like it either, but in context, we'll show you in a second, it's going to matter. So now there's our kick click. Let's move it on. We're going to look at the kick ambience here. And this one is, if I remember correctly, worshipdrums.com somewhere. I got this kick sample and it says Bethel kick. And I was like, I like the way that their records sound. So let me check this one out. So I pulled this sample in, but I've already got my main kick. I already got my kick click. I just wanted some ambience. And I was cycling through some of the samples. I found this one and here we go. I filtered it. I didn't want the top end. I didn't want the click. I got that from my original and the kick click. So I'm pulling that out. I don't want that airy room sound. I wanted it to be a little bit more in the mid-range. And so after that, I put on the Valhalla room and I blended a little bit of this room tone. And we ended up with something that started like this. Cool. And so now I'm blending that in with the others. So again, we started with this. We added the click. And we add our ambience. Again, in solo, doesn't matter, right? We got to check in context. This is a very dense mix. That ambience track is barely audible once we put it in context. Here, let's put it in context with the drums, and you'll even hear that ambience is good, but it's not overwhelming like it was in solo. Massive difference, right? So Everything in solo can be great to identify problems and work through it, but it doesn't matter. Check it in context. So there we go. We've processed the kick drum by blending. We had our light kicks. We've got the kick click. We got the kick ambience. And then those kicks go to the kick level where I did some EQ against the track. What I did, shaping it to the mix, felt like I needed a little bit less of the click in the kick, and I dialed back 5K and 7.5K, just shaping it to the mix. A couple other things we've got going on with the kick drum. We've got a sidechain going to the bass. I'm compressing the bass down using the kick drum just a little bit. Nothing crazy, nothing like super dramatic like in the dance world, but stealing that technique and using it here. Next up, we have a submaster send. My 2-bus I call the submaster. That's where everything funnels to. And for this kick drum, I needed more volume. It's a technique I got from Bob Horn years ago. Was, hey, you get the mix going, you get everything going, and then you're like, I need more kick drum, but your kick drum's already loud and you don't want to, it's going into your drum bus and then your mix bus. You don't want to change the relationship. This is where I send a backdoor copy of the kick to just the mix bus to give me more volume. It's kind of a get out of jail free card. So that's a little trick I did, and I sent quite a bit of it. I had to get it up in the mix. Mix revisions, need more keys, need more vocal, need more this. Well, then my drums are low. So now I'm boosting more vocal and we're just chasing our tail. But there's a good trick to get you there. Send it to the back door behind your buses. Next up, we have the subsplash. Do I share this now? Oh, a little bonus tip. I'll tell you what, before I share about the subsplash, let me tell you, this song, these drums, the entire process, I'm going to mix it again for free, an entire course. You can get it, link in the description. I'm taking this song on from start to finish. We're going to do the raw files using my template. So I'm cheating a little bit, but I'm going to show you every bit of processing. We're going to look at mixing the drums, the low end, managing the bass, everything. Guitars, keys, synths, very dense mix, lots of tracks. Shout out to my man, Dr. Toomey, my brother from another mother, allowing me to use for tutorials. I appreciate that greatly. And we're going to be featuring this in the Mix Academy. Again, link in the description where you're going to be able to check that out. Sign up for free. I do have an all access bundle that you can upgrade to if you want. You can pay a little bit to get that. Get the Multitracks, the mix breakdown tutorial, similar to what we've done here today, where we're showing off before and after samples. So you don't have to watch all the long-winded training to see what worked and didn't work. You can go straight to the kick, the snare, the toms, whatever, and see exactly what I did in those mix breakdown videos. But that's another thing. The course is completely free. Check it out, link in description. And now we will look at the subsplash. Down here in my template, I have a bus called the subsplasheroo. The first processor on it is an EQ. I'm filtering out top end, boosting the crap out of low end into a reverb. In this case, we have the FG-BM7 Verb Suite Classics, FG-BM7, and this is the Ice House. It's an 8.5 second or so reverb. What I'll do is I'll send sometimes toms, sub drops, kick drums in this case, anything that I need a little extra low-end energy from for one or two hits throughout the song, anywhere where it calls for it, I'm automating and turning this on. So let me find where we actually did it. So if we go to our bus, we got the subsplasheroo, and let's check out the automation. It's this first one right here. So at the beginning of the song, listen to the drums. You hear kind of like that resonance, right? It's not like an 808 like my voice was trying to imitate, but you get that elongated, the sustain from the reverb. That kick drum is muted. The send is muted to the subsplash, except for this one hit. That's it. The entire song is the only time you hear it. But without it, if I turn that off and listen to the beginning of the song, major downer. So now let's put it back in. Now you have kick drum sustain as my Valhalla shimmer reverb on my pad there rings out. Now you've got sustain for the kick drum matching the energy of the bass, and it just creates this nice beautiful extension of that first hit there at the intro. So that's the subsplash. This last one was drum reverb. Didn't use it on this song. It was from a different song, so we don't need to talk about it here today. But that's it. Hey man, you want access to the full course, I'm going start to finish. You're going to see what works, what doesn't work. You're going to see some of the trial and error to delivering a final mix that sounds like this. I'll give you one last play here. Forgot I had the background vocals. We got full gospel BGVs and Dr. Toomey live lead vocal. We do have some challenges with the lead vocal. We have a studio vocal where he went and overdubbed his live leads, and we have some lines that he just couldn't match the energy or the emotion of from what he did live. And so we got two, we're blending, and I'll show you how to treat all that inside the full course. But again, it's free. Check out the link down below. Appreciate you guys hanging with me. If you enjoyed the tutorial, don't be afraid to give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. We got tons more coming your way back from dealing with some health issues, and we're cracking out videos left and right. So cranking out videos. I'm talking too fast. You would think I had some coffee, but I didn't. I can't drink coffee and causes problems. So anyways, appreciate you guys. I'll see you in the next one.